Hello, my first slide is on social thinking, and my cultural artifact is on Schindler's List. Um, the dynamics of social thinking can inflict thoughts both negatively and positively, depending on one's influenceability. For example, something as simple as watching the horrendous film of Schindler's List can leave human beings so emotionally distraught that they want to go and do good upon humanity. Sometimes seeing bad atrocities happen to other fellow human beings can ignite, the emotional thought process of changed behaviorisms. Um, Shared social thoughts are responsible for this repercussion in dynamics. Seeing thousands of individuals socially discerning they must go along with masses of Nazis killing Jewish people, whereas Schindler bestowed change discerning self-awareness that provocatively saved thousands of people. Alexander 2016 affirms social thinking that occurs when a thought process by one individual takes precedence in others, and depending on group cognition can alter states of attribution. There is an ample amount of cognitive dissonance seen throughout the artifact that exemplifies the Nazis' belief systems, justifying their social thinking and behaviors. If one feels explicitly unresponsible for another human being's demise, then they do not feel the weight or guilt for their revolting actions. Dissonance is another form of self-preservation in the light of social injustice, both social and individuals in disparities. A prime example that can be documented in my analysis throughout the culture artifact is forms of tribal thinking, especially within the in-group Nazi regime. Musagain 2019 surmises tribal forms of social thinking that happens consciously or unconsciously as a necessity adhering to the human survival, meaning humans want to conform to whatever group they feel they belong to that has the highest chance of survival, adopting their social way of thinking. In the case of Schindler's List, Nazis saw the Jewish people as lesser than, which started with thought processes and social thinking that periodically over time turned into the demolishment of Jewish people. So the key components of social thinking, our tribal mentality that can be seen throughout Schindler's List, and principles of social thinking include, a lot of attribution and cognitive dissonance. On to my next slide. The next slide I'd like to talk about is social influence. The cultural artifact that I examined contained a little girl in a red coat whose presence signified the mere innocence of human travesties that were taking place amongst the Jewish populace. Ozark Schindler, whose primary motivation was to take advantage of the cheap labor, saw the girl wearing the red coat and had an epiphany that his actualization, Schindler had realized that his employment of the Jewish people was actually saving their lives. Schindler, 2019, the major influencing factors was seeing innocent bloodshed of the Jewish people, coming to the realization it was beyond wrong, which led to the change of heart. It is hard to fully understand and comprehend who, what, and how Schindler was socially influenced, as he did not conform under Nazi tribal behaviorisms and thought processing, even though he was part of the in-group as he was a Nazi himself. He remarkably did quite the opposite. Looking at the other end of the spectrum, the social influences amongst the Jewish people conformed and obedient, whereas the Nazi regime, cruelty and killing became their normative. Social conformity that leads one to influential decisions can be detrimental and also life-saving depending on the innate situation. Erison, 2018, affirms that conformity in the form of obedience can illustrate compliance. The question that begs to differ is where the Jewish people so apt to comply to the Nazi command. The social influence that aided in the Jewish society's obedience was seeing their fellow man comply with the same regulations set forth in the artifact. Many Jewish members were knowledgeable that they were going to succumb to their demise, yet still went along with whatever was being set forth that ultimately led to their demise. Spears confirms social influence changes and conforms to the current group's subjugation and ideologies. The culture surrounding the Nazi and Jewish members during the Holocaust, the political appeal was communism, meaning the government owned everything to include personal freedoms. Both parties felt like they had no choice but to go along with governed stipulations. The mentality from some of the Nazis was, I do not want to be a part of such atrocious acts against Jewish people, but I have no choice. Others conformed because of pure evil and hatred in their hearts. Jewish members did not want to go along with the evil disparities, but were not given a choice, as they were told, do as I say, or pretty much die. What choice did they have? So they did what the Nazis said to try to save their lives. And that is my social influence slide. On to the next. Now we're going to talk about social relations. Schindler had many social relations in which saving Jewish people was even made possible because he had social relations. Being a Nazi, Schindler was able to advance in the art of persuasion as he bribed many soldiers and political officials. He also housed many staff that aided him, such as his main office clerk, who was of Jewish affiliation. Spielberg, 1993, confirms Itzhak Stern was a close social relation to Ozark Schindler, aiding and abiding the operation, employing and saving Jewish individuals. The cultural artifact had many social relations. In fact, the entire list of employed factory workers is composed of social relations in one aspect or another. Had the Jewish names not been facilitated onto the integrated list, they surely would have died, and will be forever grateful they had social relations to Schindler, who persuaded the Nazi officials. Erison, 2018, sometimes when a person becomes susceptible to persuasion, they often are not aware of what is happening, known as peripheral. Persuasion during the annals of Schindler's List it can be speculated that heavily orchestrated from the Nazi regime and Schindler when he was utilizing bribing methods for his cause. On to the next slide. My next slide consists of social prejudice. There's obviously a plethora of severe prejudice in the cultural artifact of Schindler's List. The only way Nazi affiliates could perform the many inhumane acts against the Jewish community is if prejudice was formed against them, which followed the Nazis to see them as unequal, and it also dehumanized them. Jackson 2020 confirms that Jewish people were saw as lesser than their Nazi counterparts, to the point of extreme hatefulness and anger, to which they ultimately succumbed them to their deaths. It only takes the mindfulness of one person to oppose those who seek to destroy others. No one should go along with the actions of hatefulness, and that message strongly applies to the world in which we all live today. Sadly, prejudice is hating another person for no reason other than to just hate them because of differences. Berg and Brandt, 2021, surmised the nation and the world still have many individuals and groups thereof that hate others for no reason other than the mere fact that they're just different. The world still has a long way to go in many aspects to demolish hate. No, it doesn't even come close in the comparison of the millions that died inhumanely and atrociously. But yet there's still hundreds and thousands that die on a daily basis just because people have hate in their heart. And that is my slide on prejudice. Moving on. Some career considerations. Some potential career applications gained through my vast analysis would be social worker. The reason being is many social workers aid those less fortunate, and also trained in knowing forms of abuse. Thompson 2017 social worker related to the Holocaust on a multitude of facets, such as they are trained professionals that seek and identify individuals that need help. Technically, the Jewish man that helped Schindler recruit individuals would be considered a social worker, as he was seeking to help people in dire situations that needed help. That was his main task, was to go seek and find people that he could bring to the factory for employment under Schindler. And that concludes my presentation and my slideshow. Thank you.